All right, here we are again. Starting this reading off very late at night for me. I don't normally do this late, but I was supposed to do this earlier and ended up zoning out on my phone for various reasons that, are stupid. But what are you going to do? Sometimes I imagine just totally getting rid of my phone, but it's like I keep thinking to myself, I should be able to handle it. I should be able to stay on task, stay focused, not need to shut out of my life the phone, but just use it properly and spend a reasonable amount of time on it. And yet, it never seems to be that simple. A topic for another time. Because today we have one simple goal, and that is to finish this goddamn chapter. Should have been finished some time ago. That's too much light. That's whatever. I don't care. I've stopped caring. Probably for the best. Okay. Ooh. I'm pretty sure that where I left off was abolition of parliamentarism. Let's see if we can't finish this tonight, preferably before 12 o'clock, but we'll see what happens. I'm like, I don't care. I've stopped caring. And here I am fixing my hair. All right, let's begin. The Commune, Marx wrote, was to be a working, not a parliamentary body, executive and legislative at the same time. Instead of deciding once in 3 or 6 years which member of the ruling class was to represent and repress the people in Parliament. Let me reread this. Instead of deciding 1 in 3 or 6 years which member of Parliament or which member of the ruling class was to represent and repress the people in Parliament, universal suffrage was to serve the people constituted in communes, as individual suffrage serves every other employer in the search for workers, foremen, and accountants for his business. Owing to the prevalence of social chauvinism and opportunism, this remarkable criticism of parliamentarism made in 1871 belongs now to the forgotten words of Marxism. Professional cabinet ministers and parliamentarians, the traders, the proletariat, and the practical socialists of our day have left all criticism of parliamentarism to the anarchists And on this wonderfully reasonable ground, they denounce all criticism of parliamentarism as anarchism. It is not surprising that the proletariat of the advanced parliamentary countries, disgusted with such socialists as Scheidemans, Davids, Ligens, Sembots, Rinaldales, Hendersons, Van der Veldes, Stanings, Brontings, Bissolatis, and company, has been with increasing frequency giving its sympathies to anarcho-syndicalism, in spite of the fact that the latter is merely the twin brother of opportunism. For Marx, however, revolutionary dialectics was never the empty fashionable phrase, the toy rattle, which Plekhanov, Kautsky, and others have made it. Marx knew how to break with anarchism ruthlessly for its inability to make use even of the pigsty of bourgeois parliamentarism, especially when the situation was obviously not revolutionary. But at the same time, he knew how to subject parliamentarism to genuinely revolutionary proletarian criticism. To decide once every few years which members of the ruling class is to repress and crush the people through parliament, this is the real essence of bourgeois parliamentarism. Not only in parliamentary constitutional monarchies, but also in the most democratic republics. But if we deal with the question of the state, and if we consider parliamentarism as one of the institutions of the state, from the point of view of the tasks of the proletariat in this field, what is the way out of parliamentarism? How can it be dispensed with? Once again, we must say the lessons of Marx, based on the study of the Commune, have been so completely forgotten that the present-day social democrat, i.e., present-day traitor to socialism, really cannot understand any criticism of parliamentarism other than anarchist or reactionary criticism. The way out of parliamentarism is not, of course, the abolition of representative institutions and the elective principle, but the conversation of the representative institutions. The way out of parliamentarism is not, of course, the abolition of representative institutions and the elective principle, but the conversion of the representative institutions from talking shops into working bodies. The Commune was to be a working, not parliamentary body, executive and legislative at the same time. A working, not a parliamentary body. This is a blow straight from the shoulder at the present-day parliamentarian country, from America to Switzerland, from France to Britain, Norway, and so forth. In these countries, the real business of state is performed behind the scenes and is carried on by the departments, chancelleries, and general staffs. Parliament is given up to talk for the special purpose of fooling the common people. This is so true that even in the Russian Republic, a bourgeois democratic republic, all these sins of parliamentarism came out at once, even before it managed to set up a real parliament. The heroes of rotten Philistinism, such as the Skobelevs and Tseretelis, the Chernovs, and Avksentievs, have even succeeded in polluting the Soviets after the fashion of the most disgusting bourgeois parliamentarism, in converting them into mere talking shops. In the Soviets, the socialist ministers are fooling the credulous rustics with phrase-mongering and resolutions. In the government itself, a sort of permanent shuffle is going on in order that, on the one hand, as many socialist revolutionaries and Mensheviks as possible may in turn get near the pie, the lucrative and honorable posts, and that, on the other hand, the attention of the people may be engaged. Meanwhile, the chancelleries and army staffs do the business of the state. Mm. Dielo Naroda, the organ of the ruling Socialist Revolutionary Party, recently admitted in a leading article with the matchless frankness of people of good society in which all are engaged in political prostitution, that even in the ministries headed by the socialists, save the mark, the whole bureaucratic apparatus is in fact unchanged. It's working in the old way and quite freely sabotaging revolutionary measures. Even without this admission, does not the actual history of the participation of the socialist revolutionaries and Mensheviks in the government prove this? It is noteworthy, however, that in the ministerial company of the cadets and Chernovs, Rosanovs, Zenzinovs, and other editors of Dielo Naroda have so completely lost all sense of shame as to brazenly assert, as if it were a mere bagatelle, that in their ministries everything is unchanged. Revolutionary democratic phrases to Gulliver Symbol Simmons, and bureaucracy and red tape to gladden the hearts of the capitalists. That is the essence of the honest coalition. The Commune substitutes for the venal and rotten parliamentarism of bourgeois society. Right. The Commune substitutes for the venile and rotten parliamentarism of bourgeois society institutions, in which freedom of opinion and discussion does not degenerate into deception. For the parliamentarians themselves have to work, have to execute their own laws, have themselves to test the results achieved in reality, and to account directly to their constituents. Representative institutions remain, but there is no parliamentarism here as a special system, as the division of labor between the legislative and the executive, as a privileged position for the deputies. We cannot imagine democracy, even proletarian democracy, without representative institutions, but we can and must imagine democracy without parliamentarism. If criticism of bourgeois society is not mere words for us, if the desire to overthrow the rule of the bourgeoisie is our earnest and sincere desire, and not a mere election cry for catching workers' votes as it is with the Mensheviks and social revolutionaries, and also the Scheidemans and Legens, Semblance, Vanderveldes. It is extremely instructive to note that, in speaking of the function of those officials who are necessary for the commune and for proletarian democracy, Marx compares them to the workers of every other employer, that is, of the ordinary capitalist enterprise and its workers, foremen, and accountants. There is no trace of utopianism in Marx, in the sense that he made up or invented a new society. No, he studied the birth of the new society out of the old and the forms of transition from the latter to the former as a mass proletarian movement and tried to draw practical lessons from it. He learned from the Commune, just as all great revolutionary thinkers learned unhesitatingly from the experience of the great movements of the oppressed classes, and never addressed them with pedantic homilies. Homilies? Such as Plekhanov's, they should not have taken up arms, or Tseretelli's, a class must limit itself. Hmm. Abolishing the bureaucracy at once, everywhere and completely, it is out of the question. It is a utopia, but to smash the old bureaucratic machine at once and to begin immediately to construct a new one that will make possible the gradual abolition of all bureaucracy, this is not a utopia. It is the experience of the commune, the direct and immediate task of the revolutionary proletariat. Capitalism simplifies the functions of state administration. It makes it possible to cast bossing aside and to confine the whole matter to the organization of the proletarians as the ruling class, which will hire workers, foremen, and accountants in the name of the whole of society. We are not utopians. We do not dream of dispensing at once with the administration, with all subordination. These anarchist dreams, based on incomprehension of the tasks of the proletarian dictatorship, are totally alien to Marxism, and as a matter of fact, serve only to postpone the socialist revolution until people are different. No, we want the socialist revolution with people as they are now, with people who cannot dispense with subordination, control, and foremen and accountants. See, this is a very interesting point being brought up here. That is very interesting. It's a very interesting point because I still remember how many times in conversations with people about anarchism, it was always brought up this idea that, oh, the autonomous self-organizing of the people, establishing their own society, establishing their own sense of like mutual self, or like I don't know, creating some sort of like civil society, I guess. Um, and organizing society around like mutual principles of mutual aid, I guess, community support, whatever. Um, like, whenever we got into conversations about autonomy and the autonomous organization of the people without a state, smash the state and then everyone self-organize, or like society self-organizes, that without oppression, without authority, people know their interests, people know how to work together and how to you know create a world or a society or whatever. One of the biggest like one of the biggest arguments that come back at you when you're pushing that line, in my experience, is that would be nice, but people are evil and they will not do that. People need like authority. People need people to tell them what to do. without and people need law and order and structure to tell them what's right and wrong and how to, properly behave with each other. And along with that, it sounds nice what you're saying, but it sounds like we need a different type of human being, different type of people with capacities that they currently don't have. And like, yeah, funny enough, I mean, that was also one of the things, one of the ways, one of the directions that some anarchists that I saw around uh, seemed to go with it. They're like, they would accept that premise from the argument against their presentation of the autonomous um, free organization of society. They thought, well, okay, yeah, people do need to be different. Like we need to be different, right? And then it kind of, I've seen how that kind of becomes like a, kill the cop in your head and purify yourself of relations of domination and subjugation. Like purify yourself of I don't know, liberal capitalist whatever ideology or what have you. And like I wonder I wonder if that's part of how you got some of the like anarchist left kind of like leaning into some of what we might call like, woke identity politics stuff and getting so caught up in like becoming like pure, morally pure in some way. But clearly that's a dead end. That's clearly a dead end. I mean, yeah, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of ways that people can most definitely be genuinely different to learn. Like obviously that's part of what is meant by like class consciousness, right? Is to be a somewhat different kind of person than you are now under the conditions as they are. Um, and like I don't know, like I feel like I need to go back to readings on class consciousness, but like I wonder, like, can you even have like is class consciousness even ever an individual thing? Is attaining quote unquote class consciousness ever an individual thing, or does class consciousness always mean a kind of collective understanding, kind of relating to others? Maybe. I think that's a good question. I wish I'd asked a question like that during the reading group. But then I probably would have felt stupid for having not been able to figure it out from the reading. Anyway. But yeah, this question, I like this. No, we want a socialist revolution with people as they are now, with people who cannot dispense with subordination, control, and foremen and accountants. Because I don't know, unless you are able to work with that, then yeah, you're it turns into I feel like it definitely turns into a kind of like, we have to change people, make them able to be free, which is weird sounding thing. Who are you to say? Anyway, so continuing on. The subordination, however, must be to the armed vanguard of all the exploited and working people, i.e., to the proletariat. A beginning can and must be done at once, overnight, to replace the specific bossing of state officials by the simple functions of foremen and accountants, functions which are already fully within the ability of the average town dweller and can be performed for workmen's wages. Interesting. We, the workers, shall organize large-scale production on the basis of what capitalism has already created, relying on our own experience as workers, establishing strict iron discipline backed up by the state power of the armed workers. We shall reduce the role of state officials to that of simply carrying out our instructions as reasonable, revocable, modestly paid foremen and accountants, of which of course, with the aid of technicians of all sorts, types, and degrees. This is our proletarian task. This is what we'll start with in accomplishing the proletarian revolution. Such a beginning on the basis of large-scale production will of itself lead to the gradual withering away of all bureaucracy, to the gradual creation of an order without inverted commas, an order bearing no similarity to wage slavery, an order under which the functions of control and accounting, becoming more and more simple, will be performed by each in turn, will then become a habit and will finally die out as the special functions of a special section of the population. A witty German social democrat of the 70s of the last century called the postal service an example of the socialist economic system. This is very true. At the present, the postal service is a business organized on the lines of state capitalist monopoly, or imperialism is gradually transforming all trusts into organizations of a similar type, in which, standing over the common people who are overworked and starved, one has the same bourgeois bureaucracy. Hold on. Imperialism is gradually transforming all trusts into organizations of a similar type, in which, standing over the common people who are overworked and starved, one has the same bourgeois bureaucracy. But the mechanism of social engagement is here already to hand. Once we have overthrown the capitalists, crushed the resistance of these exploiters with the iron hand of the armed workers, and smashed the bureaucratic machinery of the modern state, we shall have a splendidly equipped mechanism, freed from the parasite, a mechanism which can very well be set going by the united workers themselves, who will hire technicians, foremen, and accountants, and pay them all, as indeed all state officials in general, workmen's wages. Here's a concrete, practical task which can immediately be fulfilled in relation to all trusts, a task whose fulfillment will rid the working people of exploitation, a task which takes account of what the Commune had already begun to practice, particularly in building up the state. To organize the whole economy on the lines of the postal service so that the technicians, foremen, and accountants, as well as all officials, shall receive salaries no higher than a working man's wage, all under the control and leadership of the armed proletariat. That is our immediate aim. This is what will bring about the abolition of parliamentarism and the preservation of representative institutions. This is what will rid the laboring classes of the bourgeois prostitution of these institutions. Hmm. In a brief sketch of national organization, in a brief sketch, Subsection 4, Organization of National Unity. In a brief sketch of national organization, which the Commune had no time to develop, it states explicitly that the Commune was to be the political form of even the smallest village. The communes were to elect the national delegation in Paris. The few but important functions which would still remain for a central government were not to be suppressed, as had been deliberately misstated, but were to be transferred to communal, i.e., strictly responsible officials. National unity was not to be broken, but on the contrary, organized by the communal constitution. It was to become a reality of the destruction of state power, which posed as the embodiment of that unity, yet wanted to be independent of and superior to the nation, on whose body it was but a parasitic excrescence, while the merely re- while the merely repressive okay, while the merely repressive organs of the old governmental power were to be amputated. Its legitimate functions were to be wrested from an authority claiming the right to stand above society and restored to the responsible servants of society. The extent to which the opportunists of present day social democracy have failed, perhaps it would be more true to say have refused, to understand these observations of Marx is best shown by the book of Herostratian fame of the renegade Bernstein, The Premises of Socialism and the Tasks of the Social Democrats. It is in connection with the above passage from Marx that Bernstein wrote that as far as its political content, this program displays in all its essential features the greatest similarity to the federalism of Proudhon. In spite of all the other points of difference between Marx and the petty bourgeois Proudhon, Bernstein places the petty bourgeoisie in inverted commas to make it sound ironical. On these points, their lines of reasoning run as close as could be. Of course, Bernstein continues, the importance of the municipalities is growing, but it seems doubtful to me whether the first job of democracy would be a dissolution of the modern state and as such a complete transformation of the organization as is visualized by Marx and Proudhon, the formation of a national assembly from delegates of the provincial of district assemblies, which in their turn would consist of delegates from the communes, so that consequently the previous mode of national representation would disappear. To confuse Marx's view on the destruction of state power, a parasitic excrescence, with Proudhon's federalism is positively monstrous. But it is no accident, for it never occurs to the opportunist that Marx does not speak here at all about federalism as opposed to centralism, but about smashing the old bourgeois state machine which exists in all bourgeois countries. The only thing that does not occur to the opportunist is what he sees around him in an environment of petty bourgeois philistinism and reformist stagnation, namely only municipalities. The opportunist has even grown out of the habit of thinking about proletarian revolution. The opportunist has even grown out of the habit of thinking about proletarian revolution. It is ridiculous. But the remarkable thing is that nobody argued with Bernstein on this point. Bernstein has been refuted by many, especially by Plekhanov in Russian literature and by Kautsky in European literature, but neither of them has said anything about this distortion of Marx by Bernstein. The opportunist has so much forgotten how to think in a revolutionary way and to dwell on revolution that he attributes federalism to Marx, whom he confuses with the founder of anarchism, Proudhon. As for Kautsky and Plekhanov, who claim to be orthodox Marxists and defenders of the theory of revolutionary Marxism, they are silent on this point. Here is one of the roots of the extreme vulgarization of the views on the difference between Marxism and anarchism, which is characteristic of both the Kautskyites and the opportunists, and which we shall discuss again later. There is not a trace of federalism in Marx's above-quoted observation on the experience of the Commune. Marx agreed with Proudhon on the very point that the opportunist Bernstein did not see. Marx disagreed with Proudhon on the very point on which Bernstein found a similarity between them. Marx agreed with Proudhon in that they both stood for smashing the modern state machine. Neither the opportunists nor the Kautskyites wished to see the similarity of views on this point between Marxism and anarchism. Both Proudhon and Bakunin, because this is where they have departed from Marxism. Marx disagreed both with Proudhon and Bakunin precisely on the question of federalism, not to mention the dictatorship of the proletariat. Federalism as a principle follows logically from the petty bourgeois views of anarchism. Marx was a centralist. There is no departure whatever from centralism in his observation just quoted. Only those who are imbued with the Philistine superstitious belief in the state can mistake the destruction of the bourgeois state machine for the destruction of centralism. Now, if the proletariat and the poor peasants take state power into their own hands, organize themselves quite freely in communes, and unite the action of all the communes in striking at capital and crushing the resistance of the capitalists, and in transferring the privately owned railways, factories, land, and so on to the entire nation, to the whole of society, won't that be centralism? Won't that be the most consistent democratic centralism, and moreover, proletarian centralism? Bernstein simply cannot conceive of the possibility of voluntary centralism, of the voluntary fusion of the proletarian communes for the sole purpose of destroying the bourgeois rule and the bourgeois state machine. Like all Philistines, Bernstein pictures centralism as something which can be imposed and maintained solely from above and solely by the bureaucracy and military clique. As though foreseeing that his views might be distorted, Marx expressly emphasized that the charge that the Commune had wanted to destroy national unity, to abolish the central authority, was a deliberate fraud. Marx purposefully used the words, national unity was to be organized, so as to oppose conscious democratic proletarian centralism to bourgeois military bureaucratic centralism. But there are none so deaf as those who will not hear. And the very thing the opportunists of present-day social democracy do not want to hear about is the destruction of state power, the amputation of the parasitic excrescence. Excrescence. What an interesting and bizarre word. Makes you think of essence, existence, and excrement. A distinct outgrowth on a human or animal body or on a plant, especially one that is the result of disease or abnormality. Oh, it's like a tumor. It's a growth. It's a weird little nub that's just hanging off on the end there. Soaking up all the nutritious life energy of the proletariat. Did you get a nice view of my throat? Sorry. All right, last section, and then I'm heading to bed. And then I've got to like not try to have fun when I get off work tomorrow, and I need to go ahead and read the next chapter so that I can do my like super big reads on Monday and Tuesday and finish this whole thing. I really, 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 really don't want to show up to a reading group and once again have it be where I haven't done all the reading. Like that is so frustrating. I swear, my teeth, I swear, I've got like cavities or something. It's just fucking bullshit. I need to go see a dentist soon. Not happy about it. I wonder if you can get care credit from a dentist's office and then be reimbursed through insurance later. Be cool. Anyway. Okay. Subsection 5, abolition of the parasitic state. We have already quoted Marx's words on the subject, and we must now supplement them. It is generally the fate of new historical creations, he wrote, to be mistaken for the counterpart of older and even defunct forms of social life, to which they may bear a certain likeness. Thus, this new commune, which breaks the modern state power, has been regarded as a revival of the medieval communes, as a federation of small states, as Montesquieu or the Girondins. Girondins, I don't know how to pronounce that, I'm just making shit up, visualized it as an exaggerated form of the old struggle against over-centralization. Mm. The communal constitution would have restored to the social body all the forces hitherto absorbed by that parasitic excrescence of the state, feeding upon and hampering the free movement of society. By this one act, it would have initiated the regeneration of France. The communal constitution would have brought the rural producers under the intellectual lead of the central towns of their districts, and there secured to them in the town working men, the natural trustees of their interests. The very existence of the commune involved, as a matter of course, local self-government, but no longer as a counterpoise to the state, now becomes superfluous. Breaking state power, which as a parasitic excrescence is its amputation, its smashing. State power now becomes superfluous. These are expressions Marx used in regard to the state when appraising and analyzing the experience of the commune. All this was written a little less than half a century ago, and now one has to engage in excavations, as it were, in order to bring undistorted Marxism to the knowledge of the mass of the people. The conclusions drawn from the observation of the last great revolution which Marx lived through were forgotten just when the time for the next great proletarian revolution has arrived. Hey, maybe that means the time of the next great proletarian revolution has arrived. We've once again forgotten all this shit. So, maybe the cycle repeats. Quote, multiplicity of interpretations to which the commune has been subjected and the multiplicity of interests which expressed themselves in it showed that it was a thoroughly flexible political form, while all previous forms of government had been essentially repressive. Its true secret was this. It was essentially a working class government, the result of the struggle of the producing against the appropriating class. The political form at last discovered under which the economic emancipation of labor could be accomplished. Except on this last condition, the communal constitution would have been an impossibility and a delusion. The utopians busied themselves with discovering political forms under which the socialist transformation of society was to take place. The anarchists dismissed the question of political forms altogether. The opportunists of present-day social democracy accepted the bourgeois political forms of the parliamentary democratic state as the limit which could not be overstepped. They battered their foreheads, praying for this model and denouncing as anarchism every desire to break these forms. Marx deduced from the whole history of socialism and the political struggle that the state was bound to disappear and that the transitional form of its disappearance, the transition from state to non-state state, would be the proletariat organized as the ruling class. Marx, however, did not set out to discover the political forms of this future stage. He limited himself to carefully observing French history, to analyzing it, and to drawing the conclusion to which the year 1851 had led, namely that matters were moving towards destruction of the bourgeois state machine. And when the mass revolutionary movement of the proletariat burst forth, Marx, in spite of its failures, in spite of its short life and patent weakness, began to study the forms it had discovered. The Commune is the form at last discovered by the proletarian revolution under which the economic emancipation of labor can take place. The Commune is the first attempt by a proletarian revolution to smash the bourgeois state machine, and it is the political form at last discovered by which the smashed state machine can and must be replaced. We shall see further on that the Russian Revolution of 1905 and 1917, in different circumstances and under different conditions, continue the work of the Commune and confirm Marx's brilliant historical analysis. The next section is quite long as well. Quite long. Quite long. Quite long. All right, well, that's where we're at. That is it for tonight. I'm tired. I have work in the morning. Well, noon. That's an interesting read. Definitely interesting. Yes. All right then. Well, goodbye.